Okay, Tov, today's daf is daf Nun Ches in Ksubbas, as we learned for 4 Shlema 4, Elazar ben Ruma, Yosef ben Chaim Michal. Says the Gemara, right from the 4th line on the page. We talk about when a Kohen marries a woman, betroths a woman, technically Minatori is entitled to give a truma right away. But the rabbis forbade them from doing that. The main reason we brought in, two reasons. Well, the first reason we said is because maybe she'll give it to her family members since she's still living at home. And therefore, the rabbi said, don't give her any food until 12 months have passed from the time that she demanded or he demanded that they get married. At that point, he assigns for her a separate abode and she's there and she's no concern about giving the food to her family members. More about that another reason because of Simpun, but we'll see that reason applies more with the later Mishnah, because maybe he'll find a mum in her and he'll be mavatal he'll annul the wedding, the Erison, and turns out that she was a Bas Yisrael eating truma, which would be forbidden. So once the 12 months happen and he assigns her a separate place to live, and if he's a Kohen, he can give her truma. Can he give her only truma, or must he also give her chulin also? Because part of the time she's in Nida, she's tamei, whatever, and she can't eat the truma. So Rav Tarfon says no. Rav says you can give her all truma. That's what the Mishnah said. Rav Tarfon said give her all truma when she can't suffice with the truma because she's not pure, she's tamei. She sells the truma and buys chulin with it, even though truma is worth less on the market because it has a smaller market. Gemara always understood that supply and demand. The only Kohanim could eat truma, so there's a much smaller market, so it's worth less. But that's how it is. She sells the truma and buys the chulin. That's what Rav Tarfon said. Rav Akiva says, split it. Give her half chulin, half truma, so she will have something to eat when she is tamei. So Amar Abai, machlokes bas kohen lekohen. That's only a bas kohen lekohen, meaning where even the one she's marrying is already a bas kohen who understands truma and understands how to not eat truma when you're tamei, and she's at home with her family who are also kohanim. Of a bas Yisrael kohen, but if she's a bas Yisrael who never dealt with truma before, giving her kohen, truma. Even if Tarfon would agree, you have to give her half chul, half truma. She's not familiar with selling it. She's not familiar with abstaining from eating it when she's tamei. So you must give her chulin and truma both. Omer Rabbi machlokas barusa. Machlokas is also only when she's betrothed. Then she's at home and her family could deal with it, could sell it for her, whatever. Barusa ubas kohen. In other words, if she's the bas Yisrael, you're not allowed to give her any truma at all. But even if she's a bas kohen and she's living at home with her family, then we have machlokas, can give her all truma or not. But if she's fully married, once she's fully married, she's not home with her parents anymore. Her father, she's not home with her father, who's a Kohen, can marry to sell off the truma. She's supposed to be at home. Called kvuda bas melech penima. Better for her to be home. But in other words, if she's already married, and let's say you're traveling and you have to assign food for her, you have an apotropos or somebody who takes care of it. If she can't take care of herself, you better make sure that she has some chulin, because what is she supposed to do when you're not home? She doesn't have a father. She's not living with her father anymore, who's going to sell the truma for her. So you must give her half chulin, half truma, even if she's already married to her. She's certainly entitled to eat truma, but you must supply her with chulin for the times that she's tamei. Tanya Namiyach, we see in a brisa here that expands even more than the Mishnah. Tarfon Amenos not called truma, like we saw in the Mishnah. Tarfon says you give her all truma, and when she needs to, she'll sell. She'll sell it when she's tamei. She'll sell the truma and get chulin. Kiva or machzachol matzah truma. More, when do we have this machlokas? The bas kohen lekohen. She's a bas kohen lekohen. The bas kohen, she's already a bas kohen, so her father can sell the truma for her, and she's familiar with abstaining from truma when she's tamei. Av bas Yisrael lekohen, they become machzachol matzah truma. Even Rav Tarfon would agree you have to give her partially chul and partially truma. Medvar more in barusa again. The bas kohen can give her. You can give her according to Rav Tarfon, you can give her all truma. That's by an arusa. But assume she's fully married to you, they become machzachol matzah truma. So far, that's the Mishnah and the way we described it so far in the brisa above. But this brisa adds more. It's not half and half, but give her 2/3 truma, 1/3 chulin. Maybe it's because most of the time she's not tamei, Whatever the reason is, Rabbi Yehuda Seir says Rashi doesn't help us here. He says give her 2/3 truma and 1/3 chulin. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, it's not called truma. You give her everything truma. So the obvious question is, that's what Rav Tarfon says. What's Rabbi Yehuda adding, right? Rav Tarfon in the Mishnah and in the Brisa said that after 12 months of being in Arusa, you don't give her any food during that time. After 12 months, when he sets a separate place for her, so that she won't give it to her brothers and sisters, or he has her checked out in terms of a simpon, as we said, if the reason of the simpon, he has to give her food. And if he's a Kohen, Kiva said give her half and half. Even Rav Tarfon agreed that if she's a Bas Kohen, you can give her, if she's a Bas Yisrael, you also have to give her half and half. And if she's fully married, you have to give her half and half. But if she's a Bas Kohen and she's on a Rusa, the Tarfon says you can give her all truma. And when she needs to sell, she'll sell. She's at her father's house. Father could sell it for her, and she could buy chulin with that. Rav Yehuda says also no, so not called truma. What's the difference between them? Give her all truma, and she'll, when she needs chulin, because she's tamei, she will sell and buy. She will sell the truma and buy chulin with that money. That's what Rav Yehuda. So how is Rav Yehuda different than Rav Tarfon? Rav Tarfon also says give her all truma. So Rashi says that Bein Rav Yehuda ben Rav Tarfon Ika. What's the difference? Either Rav Tarfon sovereign us like truma because himself. In other words, you just give her enough to eat, all truma. Now, when she sells the truma, as we said, truma is a smaller market. Only Kohen will buy it, right? So it's going to be harder to sell. She's going to get less money for the truma. She won't have enough money from that truma to buy the equivalent amount of chulin, so she'll be a little bit short. According to Tarfon, he doesn't care about that. You just have to give her enough truma to eat. Period. Give her the exact amount that she'll need. Even though if she has to transfer some of that truma to chulin, she'll come out short. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you got to give her enough truma. So even though he says you can give her all truma, you got to give her enough that for the time that she's tamei, let's say she's tamei half the time or a third of the time, she'll have enough. She'll be able to get. So there'll be enough truma there to be sold, even though it's sold at a lower price, but there'll be more truma than would be normally chulin, so that she'll have enough to buy chulin to sustain her for the whole period of time. Rav Tarfon's not worried about that. Rav Tarfon says just give her enough truma to eat for the period of time. Let's say you give her a truma for the month of food. Give her a month's worth of food, even though if she has to sell the truma for, let's say, 1 week and buy chulin with it, she'll come out short because the truma is worth less than the chulin. Rav Yehuda says no, give her enough truma so that even she sells truma, which goes at a lower price, she'll have enough to buy chulin. That's from Senior Rav Yehuda and Rav Tarfon. Shimon Gamliel says, truma. Whenever you mention truma, giving her truma, you give her double the amount of truma. In other words, let's say she eats a bushel a week of chulin, right? And then let's say 1 week a month she's expected to be tamei. So for that week, you got to give her twice as much truma. In other words, instead of, let's say a month is 4 weeks, you're giving her for 4 weeks. Instead of 4 bushels, you got to give her 5 bushels, right? 5 bushels. That's really what he's saying. You got to give her 5 bushels for that, because for that week she'll need double the amount. I wasn't between Rav Shimon Gamliel and Rav Yehuda. In other words, when you give her so much truma, double the amount of truma in chulin, then she could just sell it easily. It's very easy to sell if she has plenty of it, and it'll still be enough to cover the cost of the chulin. In other words, you need a lot more. Rav Yehuda said, Rav Tarfon says, just give her the basic amount that it covers her food. Enough food to eat. If it turns out that she's tamei for a week and she'll have to sell that truma, she'll come out a little bit short, because when she sells the truma, she won't be able to get the equivalent amount of chulin. Rav Yehuda says, no, give her enough truma so when she sells it, she'll have enough for the chulin. Rav Shimon Gamliel says, no, you give her much more truma, so much more truma that it'll be very easy for her to sell the truma and get chulin with it. She won't have to look around for buyers. She'll sell it easily at a cheap price and still have enough money to buy the chulin. The Mishnah said a yavam till he marries her. What happens over here? Ruvain got married to Leah, but he didn't marry her; he just had betrothal, right? 6 months later, they hadn't been married yet. They didn't get married yet, and he dies. No children. So Shimon is the yavam. The brother has to marry her. But if he hasn't married her yet, he can't give her truma, even though Reuben and Shimon are both kohanim. So my time, and why can't he give him truma? Because kinyan kaspam rachmana. The kinyan that you bought with your money, meaning you gave her a ring. Reuven, who had get engaged to her right? Got engaged to her, betrothed her. He can give her truma. Okay, the rabbi said don't give her truma because maybe she'll give it to her brothers, or maybe she'll have a blemish and he'll be upset and he'll nullify the whole wedding. Fine, that's the reason why he didn't do it until 12 months. But Minatorah, you can give her truma right away, Kinyan Kaspo. But this is Kinyan Achav. This is not Kinyan Kaspo. The Yavam didn't do anything. He hasn't done anything yet. The brother died, they buried him, and now he's a Yavam, right? The brother, she's in front of Shimon. He can't give her to eat. The way Rashi learns, even if the brother Reuven had given her to eat, it was past 12 months. Still, once he's dead, that power that he gave, that's gone. That power that he gave to give her food is gone. Since Mais Pakalik and his acquisition is gone. Once he's dead, once Reuven's dead, he doesn't own her anymore. It's no longer Kinyan Kaspo. And it's a brother. The brother didn't marry her yet, so therefore he can't give her truma. Once he marries her, even though he doesn't pay her anything, remember, he doesn't give her a ring. Shimon doesn't have to give her a ring and say Mikadeshly. He just has bia with her, and that's it. But once he has bia with her, it's no less, Rashi says, than a regular person. Reuven, let's say Reuven betrothed her not with a ring and say Mikadeshly, but he said Mikadeshly, but biazu, even though the rabbis frowned upon that kind of a kedushin. But it's a kedushin. You can Isha Nikis Bekesef Shtar, but bia. He can betroth her by having bia with her. So this bia that the Yavam was going to have with her is certainly no less than that. He acquires it that way. Once it's his wife, it's his Isha. Once it's his wife, it's his one. Once he marries her as bia with her. Remember, we learned even if it was Shalamidas, it was an accident, whatever the reason was. However, the Yavam has bia with her, he acquires her and it's his wife, and then of course he can give her truma if he's a Kohen. He's a Kohen and his brother's a Kohen. Obviously, they're brothers from the father. So if Reuben's a Kohen, so is Shimon. Also, the Mishnah said even if as long as the way Rashi learns is as long as even if she was 6 months betrothed to the husband and 6 months to the Baal, or even if she was 11 months and 29 days betrothed to Reuven, and 1 day to the Yavam, she doesn't eat. Then the Mishnah went on to say, even if she's 11 months and 29 days betrothed as a Yavama, she still doesn't eat Truma. If she was 11 months plus in front of the husband, betrothed to the husband, she doesn't eat Truma, as you don't add them up together. You don't add up the time of the Baal and the time of the Yavam. So Marach was 11 months plus in front of the Baal, she doesn't eat Truma. But boy, certainly the Yavam, he's not Kinyan Kaspo at all. So it's obvious. Sometimes it's this, and certainly if she was 11 months plus in front of the Yavam, she's only had a few days in front of the Baal, and she hasn't eaten yet, certainly she can't eat now. But the way Rashi learns, we said Tosfos learns a little bit differently. Rashi learns, even if the husband did give her to eat, she was betrothed to the husband for 13, 14 months, and he started giving her truma, but once he's dead, he can't give her truma anymore, and the Yavam can't give her truma until he marries her. Zumish Rishana. So he said that's the first mission that said that after 12 months, you have to give her food, and you could even give her truma, and you're not worried anymore about her giving it to her brothers. Why? Because once you start sending her food regularly, once you have to start supplying us, the rabbi said, when you didn't fix a date for the wedding, and he betrothed her a long time ago, and she said, look, it's time to get married. And 12 months have passed since she claimed she wanted to get married, or he wanted to get married. 12 months have passed. He has to start feeding her. Once he starts feeding her, he assigns her a separate apartment because he doesn't want the food to be, consumed by her family. So, you want to do the minimum required. It's not an obligation to feed, the other one. I remember when Lawrence Becker used to be here in the shul, and when his oldest daughter, got engaged to Noga ben David's son. So he asked him like a father, a prospective father-in-law. He said to the boy, do you think you can support a family? So he says, yeah, I think so. He says, good, there are 6 of us. There are 4 kids and the parents, So, there's he's not responsible to feed the whole family. So once he's sending her food, he sets aside a separate apartment for her to live in. So then there's no concern about her giving truma to her brothers and sisters. And therefore, if he's a Kohen and she is and she's engaged to him, he's entitled to give her truma. How much truma? It depends, as we said before. If she's a Bas Kohen, you can give her, according to Talmud, you can give her all truma. If she's a Bas Yisrael, everybody agrees you have to give her half and half.
But then you're not worried about the other issues. Because if you said it's a
No, either way.
married.
No. So we said that as far as a separate apartment, that takes care of giving to the brothers. As far as the Simban goes, we said he has her checked out by her family, right? So he said that's the first mission. First mission says after 12 months you can feed her and you can give her truma, etc. The second mission said the second mission later on the rabbis changed their opinion. The Bezdin said no, she shouldn't eat truma until goes into the chuppah. My time. What's the reason? Amar Ula, mishum simple. So now Ula, who said the reason why you can't give her food during the 12 months, can't give her truma, is because maybe we'll give it to her brothers, maybe she'll give it to her brothers and sisters. Okay, but now that's good if that's the reason. But the later Bezdin said in the Mishnah that no, don't feed her, don't give her any truma until they actually get married, till the chuppah, because you're worried that maybe he'll find a blemish in her and nullify the whole wedding, and then it comes out that she wasn't allowed to eat truma at all if she's a Bas Yisrael. So Bishlam Ula give this reasoning. The first Mishnah who held that you can give her food after 12 months is because the concern is that maybe you'll give her, she'll feed a kos of truma, she'll give her a cup of wine of truma in her father's house to her brothers. That's the reason, and that's taken care of by assigning her a separate apartment. Ubasraisa mishum simpon, but the second Mishnah said no. You can't give her after 12 months. Can't give her because we're worried that maybe he'll find a blemish in her. And that could be even after the 12 months. So therefore he said, don't give her truma until she gets married. Of course, it could still very well be that the first reason could apply, meaning you can give her a separate apartment and feed her, but just don't give her any truma. You can't give her any truma until then. Rav Shmuel said on yesterday's daf, the end of the daf, that the reason for the first mission, the reason for the first mission that you shouldn't feed her until 12 months is because of simpon. So what are you going to say? What's the difference? Why in the first mission you say it's because of simpon? That's why you don't feed her until 12 months. And the second mission you don't feed her until the chuppah. And they're both because they're symptom. What's the difference? The question is if you gave her, like, let's call it a perfunctory check by her family members who saw her on the outside, they only saw her externally, they didn't see her, let's say, without clothes. The first mission held that they checked her out and she didn't seem to have any blemishes, so you can give her truma after 12 months. The later mission held that's not considered good enough. You have to wait till you actually go into the chuppah. Then he checks her carefully. Okay, so the Mishnah says like this. We had before back on Mem Zion about 10 blot ago, we had a machlokas whether giving the food, the fact that a man must feed his wife, is that the Raisa Drabanan? Pasuk says that's one Tana. One Tana holds that it's Raisa. But the predominant opinion is that that's simply they were talking specifically if you marry the Amma Ivriya and she's a young girl, etc. But maybe it's more like an asmachta. But the reasoning for giving why a person must feed his wife, that's the rabbis. The rabbi said, you get married, you have to feed your wife. In return for feeding your wife, she has to give you her paycheck. What do you mean by paycheck? The work that she does. They didn't have paychecks in those days. She would produce a certain amount of, we'll talk about it on tomorrow's stuff. So how much sewing she's supposed to do, how much cleaning she's supposed to do, that kind of stuff. We call that her paycheck. So the mission is like this. Let's say a man says, he says, listen, whatever my wife works, the work that she's going to produce, what they call that, her work product, right? He's makdish that to the base of Mikdash. It's meaningless. She can eat it anyway. It's not kaddish. You can't say that whatever she did becomes kaddish. Let's say she says, my wife is going to sew a dress this week, right? That's what she's supposed to do, sew one dress a week. So a person wants to be makdish that. We're not talking now yet. We'll get later on into it. Can you be makdish davar shalom? She didn't do it yet. But let's say he says, I'm going to makdish my wife's work, her paycheck, or the dress that she makes. She can ignore it. She can work and she could eat that. And then she can eat the product of her work, meaning she could sell and eat it. It's not kaddish at all. That's what the Tanakhama says. Hamoser, what about the surplus? Surplus means, as we'll see, the husband is required by the rabbis to feed his wife. In return for that, whatever she works, she has to give him the paycheck. The rabbi said, though, you must feed her because maybe her paycheck isn't going to be sufficient. A lot of women couldn't work or they weren't able to work, whatever. But let's say she earns more. She does a lot of work. there's surplus. She earns over and above what she would eat. Hamosar, what about that? Can it be makdish? Rav Meir Hagdish, whoever says that is Hagdish. She could be makdish that. And she can't eat that. So any surplus that she made becomes kadosh. Rav Hassan says no, it's chulin. We'll talk about this machlokes later on. First, Rav Huna says Allah. Rav Huna Amarav Yecholi Isha Lomer Labala. A woman could tell her husband, "I don't want your food." The rabbi said, you have to feed me, and I have to give you my paycheck. My paycheck is much more than your food that you're going to give me. It's more than your paycheck, like it happens today when many women earn more than men. So Rav says like this. Rav says, a woman could tell her husband, "I'm not taking your food, and I'm not going to work for you. I'm going to keep my own paycheck." So with the Rabbanim attacking the zonos, that's the ikar. That's the fundamental. That's the main thing. The main takana was for a woman. A woman doesn't have food. Most women couldn't go out and work, and maybe she couldn't produce very much on her own. So the rabbi said, you must feed your wife. That was the main fundamental thing. Then they said, since you're feeding your wife, if she does earn anything, her paycheck, you can keep ma'asiyadem mishum eva. And once you're feeding her, if she works, she should give you that, so there shouldn't be any bad feeling that you're feeding her and she's making money and you have no access to it. So the Rabbanim were talking, the ikar was giving your wife food, and in return for that, she has to give you the paycheck. So if she says, listen, I don't want your food. The whole reason for the food is a takana for me. I'm the poor woman. So if she says, listen, I don't want your food and I'm not going to work for you, or she's allowed to. So a woman could tell her husband, I don't want your food and I'm going to keep my own paycheck. Meisvei. Tiknim Mazonos, we're going to see a brisa that said, we had this before, Tiknim Mazonos, Tachas Ma'asideh. It's this mashma the other way around. They were talking that he has to give her Mazonos food because he gets the paycheck. Mashma that the paycheck was the fundamental thing that they were mitaken. So Tiknim Mazonos, Tachas Ma'asideh. Aim to change it. Tiknim Mazonos, Tachas Mazonos. You have to change the wording around it slightly different. Yes, one is an exchange for the other, but it's the ma'asiyadeh, it's the paycheck, which is an exchange for the rabbis giving her mazonos. So if she chooses not to take the mazonos, she can say, I'll keep my own paycheck. Lein Messiah, it's a proof from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, "Makdish ma'asiyadeh ishto." If you're makdish, your wife's work product, she can ignore it. She can continue to take the paycheck, whatever she earns, whatever, and eat. She doesn't have to give that takdish. My love. Are we not speaking about benazonos where the husband's willing to give her food, and even though he's willing to give her food, she could say no. You say then the paycheck, if he's willing to give her food, she has to give him a paycheck. And since you say over here, it's not kadosh, her paycheck is not kadosh, rather she could do with what she wants, shows that she could say, I don't want your food and I don't want, and I'm going to keep my own paycheck. It's not kadosh. You have no power to be makdish something which is mine. Says low, maybe speaking about where he can't feed her. If he can't feed her, he's not able to feed her. If he has no food, he's poor himself, he's destitute. If he can't feed her, then she can, maybe that's why she can keep her paycheck. Yeah, maybe that's why he's poor, because he's giving everything to Hektish. Even Shane and the Zonas, the Gemara says if he can't feed her, my lament wants to chiddush in that. Of course, if he can't feed her, how can he demand her paycheck? Even when it holds the Yachal Rav Loma Levet that a master can tell, a slave owner could tell his Evet Kanani, you work for me and I'm not going to feed you, too bad. I own you, you're my slave. It doesn't say he should live with you. Evet Ivri should work with you. Well, you can't demand that he work for you and you don't pay him. But Koshke Isho, certainly your wife, you can't demand that she should work for you, give you her paycheck and not feed her. That can't be. So what's the chiddush in that? It's the safe. You're right. There's no chiddush in that. The truth is, in other words, we slugged it, but you can't prove from our Mishnah like Rav Huna Marav that a woman can say, I don't want your food and I don't want my paycheck, because maybe that's speaking about where he's not giving her food. So what's the chiddush in that? There's no chiddush there. But the chiddush is the sefer. What's the sefer? It says Moser. If she earns a surplus, who owns that? Rav Meir says Hegdish. The husband has the right to be makdish it. Rabbi Yochanan says no, it's chulin. He can't be makdish it. Okay, so that's what we're talking about there. We're talking about the surplus, which is not connected to the mazonos. The mazonos, she can say, I don't want the food and I'm going to keep my paycheck. When it comes to the surpluses, we'll see that's done for a different reason. The surplus he gets to keep because if she works extra, because he also gives her an allowance. Besides the amount that she needs for food, the food itself, or the amount for food, he gives her a certain allowance to spend on herself, on her own needs. So that he's also entitled to, and therefore a mayor says he's called Hegdish. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's chulin. We'll talk about this. Upligid Resh Lakish. But we're going to talk about Rav Meir and Rav Yochanan later on. But first, we're going to say this: is what Rav Huna said, that a woman could tell her husband, "I don't want your food, and I'm going to keep my own paycheck." Why? Because why does she get food? The rabbi said, "Listen, she may not have what to eat, so we make a takana. You have to give her food. But if she says, I don't want the food, I don't want your food, I'll keep my own paycheck," she could do that. Rish Lakish disagrees. No, he can force her to get the paycheck, according to Rish Lakish. Why? Don't Rish Lakish. Lo tame the time of Rav Meir. Don't assume that the reason why Rav Meir says in our Mishnah, when a man is makdish, the surplus, her surplus work, over and above the amount that she would eat, the surplus, Rav Meir says that's hektish. Don't think that the reason is Mishum B'Ksavar Adam Makdish of Shalom. Rav Meir does indeed hold that you can be makdish something which is not here. You can be makdish something which is not here yet. But Rish Lakish said, don't think that's the reason in our Mishnah. Don't think the reason why Rav Meir says you can be makdish her surplus work is because you can makdish something which is not, even though the work hasn't been made yet. I'm makdish the dress she's going to make, even though she didn't make it yet. Since he can force her to work, so since he says he can force her to work, you see he doesn't hold like Rav Huna Rav. Rav says, can't force her work. If she says, I don't want your food and I'm not going to work, she could do that. Rav Meir says no. According to Rish Lakish, Rish Lakish says the reason why Rav Meir says that Tegdish is because since a man can force his wife to work, Nasik Homer, it's as if he said, if he says your hands are kadosh for the work they're going to produce. I makdish your hands, woman, you're my wife. I makdish your hands for the work that they're going to do, and the hands are here. He didn't use those words. He didn't say I makdish your hands. But keeping the Shemil Rav Meir, since we know that Rav Meir said elsewhere, a person doesn't say something for nothing, and if he can't be makdish over Shabbat Olam, how does it work? It's as if he said, it's as if he said specifically, I makdish your hands for their work. Where does Rav Meir say that the person doesn't mostly doesn't say something for nothing? Where we talk about haracha. Haracha has different values. Remember, for a 30-day-old baby till 5 years old, 5 till 20, 20 till 60, and over 60 different amounts. If you give your value to the base of English, there's different amounts there. What happens if he says, I'm marich a baby that's not 30 days old? What happens there? There is no haracha in the Torah there. So he has to give the value of the baby, what it would be sold for in the market. If you're selling babies on the market to somebody who wants to adopt, what is that worth? In other words, even though there is no haracha, there's no haracha, he shouldn't give anything. No, even though there's no haracha, he didn't say it for nothing. Obviously, he wants to give money, so you give it up. Therefore, there you see that Rav Meir says that. So here we see that Rish Lakish disagrees with Rav. Rav says the Rebbe's made a takana for the food. She says, I don't want the food, and I'm going to keep my own paycheck. You do it. Rish Lakish says, no. He can force her to work. He can force her for the paycheck. And therefore, she can't just say, I'm not going to eat, and I'm not going to eat my paycheck, because he can force her to get the paycheck. That's why he can be makdish according to Meir. It says more of Savar Meir, ain't a makdish of Shalom. You're saying, Rish Lakish said that, don't say the reason why Meir says that if he's makdish for the mosa, the surplus that she works, it's kadosh is because a person makdish over shalom. No, the reason is because it's since he has the power to make her work. It's as if he said, "I makdish your hands for the work that they're going to produce." So does Meir really ose and makdish over shalom? That's what is Rish Lakish right in there. Partani we learn her Omelisha famous case. We had many places in Shas. I'm a guy right now, but I'm makdish you right now. Here's the ring. Makdish to bichal after I'm a gayer, or after you're Megayer, if she's not Jewish, or if he's an Evet Kanani and he says I'm makdish you after I'm freed and I'll be a full Jew, or after you're free, I'm makdish you after your husband. In other words, I know you're married right now, but I'm giving you kedusha right now. It should be chal after your husband dies. I want to be first in line there. As soon as he's dead, I want to be your husband. Or after your sister dies, you're not married right now, but since I'm married to your sister, right? I can't marry you until my wife, your sister dies. Or I'm going to marry you after your get chalitza, because she can't marry now because she's Yavim. But Meir says mukudeshes. Meir says you could marry. So you see that a person could be maknid of a shalom or could be makdish of a shalom. Right? The Gemara assumes they're both the same, right? That ain't on a makdish of a shalom. Here you see it could be maknid of a shalom. You could be kona something shalom. The answer is me'ahiyin. You're right. From there, that's a proof. Me'halek l'mashmiel. What Rish Lakish is saying is, yes, we know Rav Meir does indeed hold that you could be maknid of a shalom. You can be makdish of a shalom. We see that from the case of I'm going to marry you after this or after that. You could acquire something which is not here right now. Right now, she's still a non-Jew, or she's still a shifcha, or they're still married, or whatever the situation is. it can't happen right now. You could do something which is lo ba'olam. From there, you see Rav Meir holds it. But from this Mishnah, when Rav Meir says it's hegdish, it's not because you're being makdish davar shel ba'olam, but rather because here it's because you're makdish the hands, and the hands are davar shel ba'olam. Hamos Rav Meir. So back to the machlokes between Rav Meir and Rabbi Yochanan Sandler. Rav Meir says that if he's makdish the mosar, it's kadosh. Rav Yochanan Sandler says no, it's chulin. Amos kadosh. When do we say when it's holy? The husband says what? The surplus work that you do, I'm makdish that. Rav Meir says it's kadosh. Rav Yochanan says it's not kadosh. Amos kadosh. When does it become kadosh? Rabbi Shmuel Dabar Mosar Lacher Misa kadosh. After Misa, while she's alive, he doesn't have that right to make it kadosh right now. Why? Because he's obligated. He's obligated to either give her an allowance, or she can keep it herself. So if he's not giving her an allowance, he can't be makdish her extra work, her surplus work. It's not his to do. It's hers. When is B'Kadosh? After death, after its death, and who inherits a wife? The husband. Then he can be makdish it. Not now. Ravada Barabam or Moser Machayim Kadosh. Ravada says no. He says it's Kadosh from right now. So Havi Bar Papa was amazed by this. He said, "What's going on? What's this machlokas? What's the case becoming? Ilema the malam zonos malam akasa. If he gives her both mazonos, regular food, and he gives her an allowance, the allowance was like a silver maw that he has to give her litzacher for her needs. My time at Kadosh. What's the reason why he says that only la'achar misa is kadosh? If he's giving her what? If he's giving her food, in return for food, what does he get? The paycheck. And if he's giving her an allowance, in return for that, he gets her surplus paycheck, right? So it's his. Why do you say it's only la'achar misa? Why do you say in Rav Meir? Rav Meir says it's kadosh, right? When is it kadosh? We have machlokas. Is it now or later? The Rav Shmuel says it's achar misa. Why? If he's giving her food and he's giving her an allowance, he's entitled to it right now. Should be kadosh from right now. He's not giving her food and he's not giving her an allowance. He's not giving her an allowance at all. So So if he's not giving her food, why would you say that he's giving her kadosh? That the surplus is kadosh from right now? He's not supplying her; that's hers. So how do you understand this machlokas between Rav Shmuel on the one hand and Rav Barav on the other hand, where one says it's kadosh la'achar misa and one says it's kadosh from right now? What's the case? If he's feeding her, so why shouldn't it be kadosh from right now? And if he's not feeding her, why is it kadosh from right now? He's giving her mazonos. In return for mazonos, he gets her paycheck. But he's not giving her an allowance. Therefore, she can keep the surplus. She's not giving her allowance for her needs. Rabbi Shmuel Savar, like we learned before, tikna mazonos tachas ma'asiyadeh. The mazonos was in exchange for ma'asiyadeh. It doesn't mean that it doesn't really mean that it means ma'asiyadeh tachas mazonos. Right? That's really what it means, because we're explaining this according to Rav and Shmuel. And Rav said before that a woman could say, I don't want the mazonos, since the takana was from me getting the mazonos. That was the fundamental takana. I could say, I don't want the mazonos and I don't want the paycheck. Right? So we took the mazonos tachas ma'asiyadeh, and the mazonos was in exchange for the paycheck, or the paycheck for the mazonos. U'ma kesef tachas mosar, and the allowance that he gives her is in return for the surplus. Even the loka yavla makesef, since in this case we're speaking about where he gives her mazonos, he's entitled to the paycheck, right? He's entitled to the paycheck, but it's speaking about where she doesn't want the paycheck, like we said before. She says, "I don't want the paycheck, and I'll keep my own work." But the allowance he's not giving her, and even though yavla makesef, mostly belongs to her. Therefore, when can he be makdish? Only after she dies. After she dies, any work that she produced, and after she dies, and he inherits her, then he can give it. He can give that. Why? Because he can makdish it. He has no power now. While she's alive, it belongs to her. But once he dies, he inherits her, so he can give it to her. He says, if there's any work product that you make during your lifetime, after death, I'm going to inherit it. That I'm being makdish from right now. So it works either because out of makdish of her home, or because he's makdish ma'asiyah that her hands are here right now. That's what makes it. Unless if it's not here, it's not here. It's not here, it's not here. But what he's saying is that's what Rav and Shmuel said. Rav says Moser la'achar misa kadosh. It's only kadosh after death, because before death it belongs to her. After death, when he inherits her, he can say right now, any work that you produce, I'm making any moser you produce. Rav Meir said in the Mishnah is hektish. When is it hektish? Only after death. Why? Because since he's not giving her allowance, she gets to keep that moser while she's alive. Ravada Barava says no. It's different. He says tik the mazonos tachas moser. The mazonos was not for her basic paycheck. The mazonos is in exchange for the moser. Umar kesef, and the allowance that he's supposed to give her is tachas ma'asiyadeh. For that he gets the paycheck. Even the gear of the mazonos, since he gives her mazonos moser didei, he gets to keep the extra. It's the other way around. He gets to keep the extra, and therefore what? If he gets to keep it, he can be makdish it from right now, because since he's giving her mazonos, or he's willing to give her mazonos, he can makdish it from right now. Even the gear of the mazono, most of the day it's moser. So since he's giving her mazonos, the extra part said, Mike, what's the machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel on the one hand, who say the mazonos is tachas ma'asiyadeh, and the more kesef, the allowance is in exchange for the mosar, for the surplus work that she does, whereas Ravada Barava says no, the mazonos is because of the surplus work that she does, and the allowance is for the basic amount. Marsav and like we said before in Daf Mem Zayin. What's mishchiach? She always needs to eat food, and she always has a basic paycheck. There's work, she always some minimum amount of work she does. So those things are more often. So therefore, they were mataken ma'asiyadeh in exchange for the mazonos. Umar Savar, but Ravada Barava, he held that mididikayitz. What she produces is not a fixed amount. It's whatever she could do. Every woman produces her basic amount is different. Also, mazonos is not necessarily a fixed amount, but an allowance is a fixed amount. He gives her $1 a week, more kesef a week, and so therefore they said that the more kesef is a fixed amount. And what else is a fixed amount? And the my osa mishka. In other words, her ma'asiyadeh is a fixed amount, because I said it wrong before. I said every woman produces differently. So it's not true. Ma'asiyadeh is a fixed amount, meaning she has to produce a minimum amount of sewing or cleaning and things like that. That's a fixed thing. So the ma'asiyadeh is in exchange for the ma kesef, which is definitely a fixed amount, the allowance. So Ravada Barava says, no, you look at this way, something which is a fixed amount. The allowance is for a fixed amount, the amount of work that she's going to produce. The food isn't a fixed amount, and the mosar is not a fixed amount. So the food that he has to give her is keneged the mosar, and the paycheck is keneged the allowance, according to Ravada Barava. That's the machlokas between Ravada Barava, who says what? That she gets he can be makdish from right now, right? The mosar, because it's his right now since he's feeding her. The mosar is keneged the amount that he's feeding her, and Ravada Barava says, right? Ravada Barava says that mazonos is tachas mosar, right? For the food that he gives her, that's in lieu of the mosar, and those are both not fixed amounts. And since he's feeding her, he's entitled to the mosar, and therefore he can makdish it from right now. All right, tomorrow's Gemara will start with Meisvei on the podcast, and on Sunday, Mishnah will start from the top of Samach Sunday's daf. Shabbat shalom l'kulam.
Shabbat shalom.